In the upscale corridors of Silver Spring, Maryland, where luxury apartments gleam under Washington, D.C.'s shadow, Eric Somuah seemed to have it all. At 34, this charismatic Jaguar salesman was living the American dream his Ghanaian immigrant parents had envisioned. Top performer at the dealership, ambitious entrepreneur planning his own healthcare business, and undeniably magnetic with the ladies. But on June 5, 2012, Eric's carefully constructed world would come crashing down in the most brutal way imaginable. Eric's supervisor arrives at the Jaguar dealership Tuesday morning, expecting to see his star salesman ready to close deals. Instead, an empty desk. Yesterday's absence was concerning, but Eric missing 2 days without a word, impossible. This was a man surgically attached to his phone, always reachable, always responsive. The calls went straight to voicemail. Text messages hung unanswered in digital silence. Something was terribly, terribly wrong. Eric's brother Michael felt the chill of dread creeping up his spine. He knew Eric better than anyone. They weren't just siblings, they were best friends. Eric would never simply vanish. When their sisters Susie and Cynthia rushed to the Vidian apartments, their hearts hammered with growing panic. The luxury building's hallways echoed with their hurried footsteps as they approached Eric's door. Using the spare key, they stepped inside, calling his name. No response. The apartment felt eerily still, like a tomb holding its breath. Then they found him. Eric lay peacefully in his bed, brown sheets pulled up almost to his forehead, as if he was simply enjoying a deep sleep. But the terrible stillness, the unnatural position, the way the morning light seemed to avoid his face, this wasn't rest. This was death. A single gunshot wound to the top of his head had ended Eric Somuah's promising life. No struggle, no defensive wounds, just cold, calculated execution while he slept, vulnerable and trusting in his own bed. Detective Dmitry Reuven arrived at the Vidian apartments with 20 years of homicide experience behind him, but the crime scene immediately told him this wasn't random violence. Every detail whispered of intimate betrayal. The apartment door showed no signs of forced entry. No kicked-in frames, no damaged locks. Whoever killed Eric had simply walked in or had been invited. Inside, the scene was pristine except for that horrific bedroom. Valuable items lay untouched. Cash on the dresser, credit cards in plain sight, an expensive laptop humming quietly on the kitchen counter. This wasn't robbery. This was personal. The killer had been methodical, almost surgical in their precision. Eric's cell phone, the device he treated like an extension of his hand, had vanished. The murder weapon, a .380 handgun, was nowhere to be found. Only a single shell casing remained, left behind like a calling card on the blood-stained sheets. But the most chilling detail? Eric's last recorded phone call was at 1:38 a.m. He'd been alive in those dark, early morning hours, possibly with his killer beside him, sharing intimate moments before the ultimate betrayal. Detective Reuven knew he was hunting someone with access, someone Eric trusted enough to let his guard down completely. The victim's romantic life would be the key to unlocking this mystery. Eric's family painted a picture of a man who loved women and wasn't shy about it. His brother Michael revealed Eric's reputation as Silver Spring's most eligible bachelor. He was a regular at local bars, often leaving with different companions, collecting phone numbers like trophies. The investigation would need to untangle a web of relationships spanning months, maybe years. Every woman in Eric's life became a potential suspect or witness, but one relationship stood out above the rest. His year-long involvement with Denise Harrington, a successful woman 20 years his senior. Denise Harrington seemed like the perfect suspect. Older, established, independent, and recently scorned. She'd met Eric at the Jaguar dealership while shopping for a new car, drawn to his charm and sales prowess. What started as a business transaction blossomed into passionate romance, but Eric's wandering eye had shattered their relationship. Denise discovered text messages between Eric and a woman named Ashley, sparking furious arguments. She knew about Tiffany too, and suspected there were others. The family never warmed to her. Perhaps sensing she wanted exclusivity Eric wasn't prepared to give. When Detective Reuven interviewed Denise, she didn't hide her pain. Yes, they were breaking up. Yes, she'd found evidence of his infidelity. Yes, she had a key to his apartment. The motive was crystal clear, a woman scorned with means and opportunity. But then her alibi checked out perfectly. Cell phone records placed her at home during the murder window. 3 separate interviews revealed no inconsistencies, no suspicious behavior. Denise even volunteered her phone records, cooperating fully with the investigation. As the obvious suspect faded away, Detective Reuven faced the daunting task of sorting through Eric's extensive romantic portfolio. The killer was still out there, possibly feeling safe, believing they'd committed the perfect crime. Then a neighbor stepped forward with information that would crack the case wide open. Katrina Ben had moved into the Vidian apartments just months earlier, a traveling nurse from rural Mississippi whose work brought her to the DC suburbs. She'd noticed Eric immediately, the handsome salesman with the expensive car and easy smile. They'd bonded over basketball games and entrepreneurial dreams. Their relationship was newer than Eric's involvement with Denise, but it was intensifying rapidly. They'd spent Monday nights watching games together, their time together increasing in the weeks before his death. Katrina seemed genuinely devastated when detectives broke the news of Eric's murder. Or was she? Katrina Ben sat across from Detective Reuven, tears streaming down her face as she processed the shocking news of Eric's death. She appeared to be genuinely devastated, struggling to understand how someone could hurt the man she'd grown to care about deeply. "I met Eric about 2 weeks after I moved in," she explained, her voice breaking. "He asked if I was a nurse because he was starting some kind of nursing agency. We connected over basketball, watched games together every Monday night." Their relationship had been building momentum. Thursday nights, Sunday evenings, and always those Monday basketball sessions. But Katrina's account of Eric's final night would raise more questions than answers. She claimed Eric had suggested they take a drive to meet someone, a drug dealer named William Woodfork. According to Katrina, this mysterious man jumped into the back of Eric's car, making her extremely uncomfortable. The exchange was brief and tense. "I work at NIH, she told detectives. "I don't want to be identified in something like this. The guy was bald, skinny, about my color with a scruffy beard. I wasn't trying to look at him directly." But the story became even stranger. Katrina claimed that when she woke around 5 a.m. to leave for work, William Woodfork was sitting on Eric's couch. Eric remained asleep in the bedroom. She offered no explanation for why this drug dealer would be in the apartment in the middle of the night. Detective Reuven's instincts screamed that something was wrong with this narrative. When they tracked down William Woodfork, he denied knowing Eric Somuah entirely. But phone records proved he was lying. Eric had indeed called him on the night of his death, just as Katrina claimed. A search of Woodfork's residence revealed a .380 handgun, the same caliber used to kill Eric. The case seemed to be falling into place, but ballistics testing eliminated Woodfork's weapon, and his alibi was solid. He was nowhere near Silver Spring that night. Katrina Ben, it seemed, was the one spinning lies. The surveillance footage from the Vidian apartments told a very different story than Katrina's tearful testimony. Security cameras captured her leaving the garage at 6:34 a.m. Tuesday morning, not the 5 a.m. departure she'd claimed. More suspicious still, she returned just 31 minutes later. When confronted about this discrepancy, Katrina had a ready explanation. She'd forgotten her cell phone in Eric's apartment. She'd parked in front of the building, gone upstairs, retrieved it, and left again within 5 minutes. But Detective Reuven wasn't buying it. If Katrina was innocent, returning to Eric's apartment nearly 2 hours after her claimed departure time meant she should have discovered his body. The timeline didn't match her story of a peaceful exit while Eric slept soundly. Even more damning was Katrina's digital footprint. Investigators seized her computer and discovered she'd been visiting Eric's Facebook page in the days after his death, long before police contacted her. She would have seen the memorial posts, the shocked comments from friends and family. She knew Eric was dead. Yet when detectives approached her 4 days later, asking to speak about Eric, her response was telling. "Eric who?" Only after this feigned confusion did she ask what had happened. For a woman supposedly devastated by her boyfriend's sudden silence, Katrina showed remarkable composure and convenient memory lapses. She denied owning any firearms, claimed she'd never even fired a gun. Her apartment in Baltimore yielded no evidence, no weapon, no blood, nothing connecting her to the crime. The case went cold. Katrina returned to Mississippi, possibly believing she'd gotten away with murder, but Detective Reuven refused to give up. He began systematically testing every .380 handgun recovered in Montgomery County since Eric's death. 57 weapons tested negative, then came number 58. 2 days after Eric's murder, a vacationing shoemaker from Montana found himself trapped in Washington, D.C.'s notorious Beltway traffic. As his car crawled along Interstate 495 near Colesville Road, something metallic caught his eye on the left shoulder. A partially destroyed handgun lay scattered on the asphalt, clearly run over by multiple vehicles. The barrel was missing, the frame cracked and broken. Most people would have ignored it, but this Good Samaritan contacted authorities. That mangled weapon would become the key to solving Eric Somuah's murder. When Detective Reuven's systematic testing reached this recovered .380, everything changed. Despite its damaged condition, forensic experts fitted it with replacement parts and test-fired it. The ballistics comparison was stunning. This gun could not be eliminated as the source of the bullet that killed Eric. The location was equally significant. The spot where the gun was found sat just 2 to 3 miles from the Vidian apartments. Detective Reuven calculated the round-trip driving time, 30 to 40 minutes. Katrina's surveillance footage showed her leaving at 6:34 a.m. and returning 31 minutes later. The timeline was perfect, but the real breakthrough came when investigators traced the weapon's serial number. Through 5 previous owners in Mississippi, the trail led to a pawn shop just miles from Katrina Ben's hometown. The shop's meticulous records revealed the gun's final purchaser, Katrina Ben, who'd bought it in 2004. The web of lies was finally unraveling. When detectives brought Katrina back for questioning, her story began shifting like sand. She now admitted owning a .380 handgun, claiming she'd never lied about it because you never asked. But Detective Reuven had been recording their previous conversation in Baltimore. When played back, Katrina's voice was crystal clear. "Do you own a gun?" "No." "Have you ever fired a gun?" "No." Caught in her deception, Katrina's composure finally cracked. The motive that drove Katrina Ben to murder became painfully clear as investigators dug deeper into her relationship with Eric. Text messages revealed a woman consumed by jealousy and possessiveness, frustrated by Eric's refusal to commit exclusively to her. She'd discovered she was what prosecutors would later call the Monday night girl, relegated to a specific slot in Eric's social calendar while he spent prime weekend nights with other women. For a woman who bragged that she'd never been dumped, this relegation was unbearable. Eric had told Katrina he loved her, discussed their future together, but his actions spoke differently. When she demanded exclusivity, he deflected. When she forbade him from attending parties, he went anyway. On Thursday, May 31st, just 5 days before his murder, Eric failed to show up on time for their basketball date. Katrina was pissed, sending angry texts that revealed her growing resentment. The final night played out with chilling calculation. Eric returned late from his evening out, paying little attention to the woman waiting in his apartment. They watched television together, perhaps reconciling, before moving to the bedroom for what Eric believed would be an intimate reunion. Instead, as he lay sleeping trustingly beside her, Katrina retrieved her .380 handgun and fired a single shot into his head. The execution was swift, silent, and merciless, but her plan to dispose of the evidence nearly worked. Driving the Beltway in early morning traffic, she threw the disassembled weapon from her car window, expecting it to disappear forever on one of America's busiest highways. She returned to her apartment, showered, and went to work as if nothing had happened. For days, she maintained the charade, even attending Eric's funeral in a black dress with a forlorn expression, surrounded by his grieving family and friends who had no idea they were comforting his killer. The trial of Katrina Ben riveted Montgomery County. Despite the largely circumstantial evidence, prosecutors painted a compelling picture of a cold, calculating killer whose jealousy had exploded into murderous rage. The defense argued that the ballistics match wasn't conclusive, that multiple handguns could have produced similar results. They suggested Eric himself might have retrieved the gun from Katrina's apartment, only to have it used against him by an unknown assailant. Could a woman who'd known Eric for mere weeks really harbor enough resentment to commit such a heinous crime? The prosecution's answer was unequivocal: yes. They argued that Katrina's pride and possessiveness, combined with her inability to accept rejection, had created a perfect storm of murderous intent. She'd expected exclusivity and received humiliation instead. Assistant State's Attorney Jessica Zarella delivered a powerful closing argument. This was an execution-style, close-range, cold-blooded, premeditated murder. She killed him because of the place she was relegated to on his social calendar, and that is inexcusable. The jury deliberated carefully, but reached their verdict decisively: guilty of first-degree murder and use of a firearm in a violent crime. Montgomery County Circuit Court Judge David Boynton showed no mercy during sentencing. His words echoed through the courtroom. It was so cold, so calculated, so devious, from an intelligent and bright woman. There's nothing that our system could ever do to rehabilitate her. She's that sociopathic and detached from human life. Katrina Ben received life in prison without the possibility of parole, plus an additional 20 years. At 37, she would never see freedom again. In a final twisted moment, Katrina stood to address Eric's family, offering what seemed like an apology but contained no admission of guilt. "I am deeply moved by each of your impact statements, and I'm very sorry for your loss." The Somuah family found no comfort in these hollow words. Their beloved Eric, son, brother, friend, was gone forever, killed by a woman who couldn't accept being anything less than his everything. Today, Katrina Ben sits in a prison cell, serving her life sentence for a crime born of jealousy, possessiveness, and wounded pride. Eric Somuah's dreams died with him that June morning, but his memory lives on through a family who fought tirelessly for justice. The Monday night girl got her wish for exclusivity, but the price was everything. Eric's life and her own freedom, lost forever to a moment of murderous rage that she can never undo.